Hi, I'm Lorraine from Simply English Edinburgh. Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to look at how to write a perfect or near perfect answer to IELTS Academic Writing Task 1 if you have a line graph. So I know a lot of you have asked for IELTS material, so let's get started with this one. So, some basic things to know about Academic Task 1 in the written part of the IELTS exam. You are expected to write 150 words as a minimum length for your answer. So please note that if you don't reach 150 words, you are deducted a full band. Now what I mean by that is if your writing is of a level 6.5, but it's short, it's automatically a 5.5. So please, the word count is really important for this one, so make sure you're reaching 150 words. You have 20 minutes of time to do this part of the exam. You have 1 hour in total for the writing, but keep in mind that because this part is only worth 40% of the written mark, it's not worth spending any more than 20 minutes on this part. And another key thing to keep in mind, and I think one of the main issues that students have when preparing for this part of the exam is that they are not familiar with the marking scheme. Now, in this part, you are being marked on task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy. I will leave a link for the marking scheme in the description box below, but something that is really important is that when you look at the task achievement section of the marking scheme, if you look at the level 5 and the level 6, the difference is that in a level 6 at academic style, you are expected to have an overview. And so many of my students come to me and they've written excellent pieces, like really coherent, really clear, great vocabulary, a good range of grammar, and no overview. And it says right there in the task achievement section that for a level 6, you're expected to have an overview, and if that's missing, you're going to be deducted quite a good amount of marks for that. So just something else to keep in mind before we get into the chunk of this video. So with a line graph, basically, you have a chart in front of you with a number of lines. I've seen everything from 2 lines to maybe 5 or 6 lines, and they're fluctuating. They're going up, down, moving around. Sometimes there's a pattern, sometimes there's not a very clear pattern. But what you want to do is you want to focus on the question that you were asked. And the question will always say, the graph below shows. So it will always start like that. And then in the example here that we are looking at, 3 types of hot drinks, the sales perhaps of 3 types of hot drinks in 3 different countries over a 10-year period. And it will then ask you to select and report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So what you want to do is the first part where it says the graph below shows the sales of hot drinks in 3 different countries. What you want to do there is you want to take the word graph and you want to alter it. So, you could use a word like pictogram, visual, or my personal favorite is visual representation. You then take the word shows and you can change that word as well. You can maybe use highlights, depicts, portrays, conveys, displays, illustrates. I'm giving you lots of options because this is vocabulary you can use later in the main body. Where it says 3 different soft drinks or 3 different hot drinks, whatever it might be, the categories, you will mention them. So in this case, tea, coffee, and hot chocolate. If it says in 3 different countries, you will name the countries, like for instance, France, Spain, and Portugal. And if it says over a period of time, you will also mention that period of time. So if I put all of that information together, I will now say the visual representation highlights information about the sale of tea, coffee and hot chocolate in France, Spain and Portugal over a 10-year period. And that is the introduction. So you literally don't even have to look at the graph. Well, you do. You look at the graph to see what countries are mentioned or what time period. But what I mean is you don't need to analyze the graph in order to write a good introduction. So what I would say is spend some time looking at different line graphs, looking at the question that you have been given, and try to time yourself writing introductions. I mean, my students now are literally like, the visual representation conveys this, this and this in this period of time, done. It should be taking you a minute, and that means you've 19 minutes left over to get on with the rest of the graph. Now, as I previously mentioned, the overview is essential. So for those of you looking for 7, 7.5, those high scores, you need a really clear, concise overview. And as previously mentioned, you're going to lose marks for task achievement if you do not have that in your answer. Now, an overview is essentially when you look at your graph, you need to try to decipher, are the lines going up? Are they going down? Or are they kind of moving up and down and all over the place? You're trying to identify a trend. So typically you will have an upward trend, a downward trend, or a fluctuating trend. Now sometimes you might have, for instance, like in this graph, 3 lines representing tea, coffee and hot chocolate, and tea and coffee increase over the period of time, but sales of hot chocolate decrease. That is still an upward trend with the exception of one of the lines, in this case hot chocolate. So what you would do is you would start off and say, overall, an upward trend is visible, or is portrayed, is conveyed. This is where we go back to all the vocabulary I gave you for the introduction. You can reuse a lot of those synonyms and put them in this part of the exam. So overall, an upward trend is visible with the exception of hot chocolate, which declined over the period of time. Okay, so that is your trend. That is the kind of general overview. It is short, it's just one sentence, so we're going to beef it up. We're going to add a little bit more information there. So maybe you want to comment on the peak of the graph, the lowest point on the graph, but that is something extra that you can add to bulk up, so to add a little bit more information to your overview. But again, your overview should be short, it should be concise. The aim with an overview is that a person who has not yet seen the graph gets a good understanding of what is going on. So if I read your overview, I should understand, okay, most of the lines on this graph are going up, except this one where the line is going down. And this is the highest point of sales on the graph, or this is the lowest point. So I have a really good general idea of what is going on. Last but not least, you've got your main body. Now, the biggest mistake I see students doing is overwriting. They try to describe absolutely everything that they see in the graph. But remember, you have been asked in your question to select and report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so what I always tell my students to do is choose 3 points on the graph that you think are interesting or of note. Everyone is going to choose something different. There is no right or wrong answer for this point. So choose 3 things. Make sure that you are covering all of the items listed. So something about all of the lines, in this case, the tea, the coffee, the hot chocolate. Make sure you have, selected something about each of those. And work chronologically. That is so important, because a lot of people talk about something in 2000 and then they jump back to 1994 and then they come back to 2005 and it's a little bit of a mess. Work chronologically. So for instance, if you select sales of hot chocolate in 1999, then maybe you want to talk about how there is an intersection in the graph between sales of tea and coffee in 2003, and then maybe you want to finish up with the finishing point for the three of them, comparing and contrasting those sales. That would be perfect, and that is enough, but you do not need to describe every single rise and fall that happens. What you do need, of course, is really good vocabulary for talking about the lines going up and the lines going down. So essentially vocabulary to describe an increase and a decrease that you can use as verbs or as nouns. So for example, other ways to say to increase would be to go up, to rise, to surge if it's a really big increase, or to soar if it's a very big increase. To jump is another one. On the other hand, maybe to decrease, you might use vocabulary like to drop, to fall, to dip if it's a small decrease, to plummet or to plunge. Both of those would be used if there is a big decrease. So making sure that you're able to say, for example, a significant increase as a noun phrase, but also that sales increased significantly, so using your verb and adverb. So that kind of flexibility of language is what is going to increase your marks for grammatical range and accuracy. So in brief, what I would say is with the line graph, you need to make sure that you are really good at writing an introduction, that you are writing a clear, concise overview where you highlight the trend, and that you are not overwriting in the main body of the exam, that you are reaching 150 words, but that you are selecting and reporting main features, you are reporting them chronologically, and if you can add to that a good range of vocabulary for talking about increases and decreases, you are well on the way to getting the mark that you want. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave us a comment, tell me what you'd like to see next in the IELTS videos, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.